here in this indictment, Hallie.
I want to mention, too, that Maduro's son, Nicolás Maduro Guerra, is speaking right now in Venezuela. I want to show a little bit of video of this, repeatedly referring to his father as President Maduro, calling for him to be released, setting up what is a rather remarkable split screen now, where you have Maduro's son in Venezuela. This is the video here. Again, this is happening just literally in the last maybe 5 minutes or so, speaking to the Venezuelan National Assembly at the same time that his father in this split screen is in court in Manhattan and New York City to face these U.S.-brought charges. I want to go to Gabe Gutierrez, our man on the ground in Colombia. And Gabe, this is a family matter for the Maduro family. You look at Celia Flores, of course, the Venezuelan first lady who is also facing charges in this indictment, somebody who has been an influential figure in Venezuela in her own right, former attorney general there. She had obviously been part of the legislative branch. This is her being walked in, as you can see, by federal officials as she arrived on U.S. soil. She has also obviously retained an attorney here, or has a defense attorney, and is facing charges alongside her husband, Gabe.
Yeah, that's right, Hallie. Incredibly influential. It's a bit of an understatement, really. Nicolás Maduro calls her Silita.
Right now in Venezuela, we are living through a moment that few analysts saw coming, and one with implications far beyond Caracas. On January 3rd, 2026, U.S. forces carried out a large-scale military operation in Venezuela's capital, Caracas, targeting the country's president, Nicolás Maduro. The operation resulted in Maduro's capture and his transfer to the United States to face federal charges, including alleged drug trafficking and related crimes. Charges he has pleaded not guilty to in a New York courtroom. To make sense of it, we need some context. For more than a decade, Venezuela has struggled with political breakdown, economic collapse, and social disintegration. Once one of Latin America's wealthiest nations, thanks to oil, it gradually became dependent on petroleum revenue, while institutions weakened and corruption deepened. Maduro succeeded Hugo Chavez in 2013 and maintained power through elections that both domestic observers and international monitors, including the United Nations and the Carter Center, criticized as lacking transparency and fairness. During this period, Venezuela saw repeated human rights abuses, suppression of opposition voices, and mass migration. Millions of Venezuelans left the country to seek safety and opportunity elsewhere, and internal dissent was often met with repression. Against that backdrop, tensions with the United States escalated sharply over the past 2 years. The U.S. government, under the Trump administration, intensified sanctions on Venezuela's oil sector and pursued a robust counter-narcotics agenda. In late 2025, military pressure around Venezuelan territorial waters and seizures of tankers marked a turning point in U.S. policy, setting the stage for a direct military operation. The U.S. government's framing of the operation is clear. Officials describe it as part of an effort to disrupt drug trafficking networks allegedly tied to Maduro's government and to remove a leader they say presided over years of repression. President Trump also articulated ambitions for U.S. oversight of Venezuela's vast oil infrastructure as part of a broader vision for post-Maduro governance. Within Venezuela, the situation is complex. Maduro's removal hasn't delivered peace or clarity. Vice President Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as interim president, with backing from the Supreme Tribunal of Justice and segments of the armed forces, even as the political crisis continues. If you step back from the immediate headlines, what we are seeing is not just the end of one leader's tenure. It is the opening chapter of a new and uncertain era, an era in which questions about sovereignty, external intervention, democratic legitimacy, and human rights are all in play. For Venezuelans, for their neighbors, and for international observers, the next weeks and months will be decisive. This moment invites serious reflection. Are there pathways to stability that respect both Venezuelan self-determination and international norms? What role should external powers play in helping resolve deep internal political fractures? And most importantly, how will ordinary people, already strained by years of crisis, fare as this larger geopolitical drama unfolds? This video won't tell you how to feel, but it will help you understand what's really unfolding, because this moment marks something we haven't seen before. Like and subscribe for more updates.
its legitimacy. He was asked many procedural questions. If he could confirm where he was born, his hometown, his mother's names, typical arraignment type material. And his answer was consistent. Stop with this nonsense. You know who I am. I'm the president of Iraq. I was illegally abducted by American forces. This is all a kangaroo court. And he refused to cooperate. And despite his refusal, he was ultimately sentenced to death and hanged.
Allegation of machine guns that have been used, Hallie, and I think some people might wonder, like, okay, Maduro's not being actually charged with having gone into, a drug trafficking situation with a machine gun. Maduro's not actually the one that's accused of bringing the drugs across the border to the United States himself. But you notice a conspiracy element here, and it's a tool that's used by prosecutors in situations like this all the time.
What led President Trump to make this move now, specifically related to what one White House official tells you was a perception of arrogance on the part of Maduro?
It's clear that this sort of dramatic surprise raid in many ways may prove to be the easy part right now. What happens next, how President Trump is able to begin this new challenge, what he's able to do with it, effectively transforming Venezuela from what he has called a broken country, or a mess in his words, into a stable, functioning one. That is the real challenge. And as we heard from the president first in his remarks on Saturday, he said, we are running Venezuela. We heard from Marco Rubio, his Secretary of State, just yesterday on Meet the Press, saying in effect, well, we're not literally running it, we're running the policy around it. But the president then again last night said, we are running it, we are in charge right now. As I speak to senior officials here at the White House, they make clear that it's not like the U.S. is governing what happens in Venezuela right now, despite the president's language, but really that it is sort of trying to use what they call maximum leverage in terms of the embargo on Venezuelan oil, using that as sort of its lever right now, cracking down on the oil in that country even before American oil companies go in. And that's the real pressure point that the White House is using to try to influence the actions of Delcy Rodriguez, the interim president, and other leaders in that country right now.
That goes back almost 20 years. So folks understand the allegations here is that Venezuela permits and facilitates the shipment of 200 to 250 tons per year of cocaine from Latin America, from South America to the United States, as well to other countries. One of the primary ways that they do it, and really effectively what they've been charged with here, is facilitating the movement of cocaine from places like Colombia, from places in Latin America, through Venezuela, and then out in
detention or a perfectly lawful apprehension, depending on whether you ask the government or critics of the government.
Danny, as we take a look here, we're looking at the scene outside court, and you see these group of demonstrators that have shown up here. We have seen over the course of the last 2 days, for example, celebrations from Venezuelan Americans here in the United States, in South Florida and beyond, celebrations from Venezuelans back in Maduro's home country. And the optics of this, we saw this image, and I want to have our team pull it up here. Maduro flashing that thumbs up to our New York station, WNBC's chopper, as it was overhead. You see it here. He's walking out. Now this is when he was earlier in Brooklyn. You see he held his hands up there for a thumbs up. You and I have talked before in other cases. Obviously, Maduro will be tried in a court of American law, but he also clearly has an eye on the court of public opinion back home in Venezuela.
This courthouse for many, many years. And I have to say, I have never seen demonstrations of this magnitude. This is a peaceful but vocal crowd here today. There are a lot of folks here, both in support of Maduro and in opposition to Maduro. And their chants can be heard over and over again. And Maduro is likely considering how he can play the public that is favorable and in support of him.
Danny, its access and ability to transship that product to Europe, to Africa, and of course the United States. As the indictment says, there is a real premium on the price of cocaine in the United States. It was very lucrative for cartels to be able to get those narcotics out of South America into the United States, and Venezuela is really one of the prime ways that they do that with cocaine. I know it's been referenced about fentanyl. Fentanyl is not something that's discussed here in the indictment. There's no allegations of that. That primarily comes through the southern border with with Mexico, either through the waterways or in the Pacific Ocean or through the border, the land border that exists across the southern part of this country and Mexico. So this is more of a focus on cocaine. This investigation and the initial charges in it goes back actually to 2011 when one of the members of the government in Venezuela was charged, brought to the United States, actually entered a plea of guilty on a number of counts back in June of this year. It's unclear whether or not that individual identified as Hugo Armando Carval Barrios, whether or not that person is cooperating, but there is a guilty plea as a result of the charges going back to 2011. Then the investigation continued into a group called the Cartel of the Suns, and that's effectively this group that helps facilitate this cocaine. That's when the charges we got in March of 2020 involved Maduro himself. His wife added to the charges, somebody who herself has been a major part of politics in Venezuela, somebody who once represented the former leader of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, is an attorney. So this is somebody who's definitely been a part of this for some time, according to the United States and its federal prosecutors here in the course of this indictment. So the focus of this investigation is basically Venezuela is a hub of operations for cocaine to leave South America and Latin America to get to the United States, and then, as I mentioned, Europe. And